Hello, my friends, and welcome to another amazing episode of Stand Up. Today, my guest is our good friend, Ophira Eisenberg, who I invited on to cheer me up and talk about what's happening in the world, our world, and, of course, her world, which is always fun, funny, and relatable. We love Ophira. You're going to love our conversation. It begins at 30 minutes into today's episode of Stand Up. I've got your headlines and news clips coming up, and I'm excited to see you at tonight's Hangout. Lots to talk about, including the loss we sustained last night's election 2 nights ago for Board of Education here in Clarkstown, New York. Got beat by the MAGA fascist mom from Liberty people, all 3 seats. We lost it. And it's devastating. I don't know how else to put it. I'm reeling. We are reeling and having a very hard time trying to understand and see the way forward. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you. So many of you reached out to me because you saw my posts on our Discord platform and maybe on social media. And many of you texted me and were wanting to know the outcome, and so many of you reached out to me and were so thoughtful, and it really was helpful to hear from you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Also, I went for my weekly Wednesday walk in the woods with the wisest guy I know, my good friend, Dr. Zatz. And man, when you're having a polycrisis of sorts, like I felt like I'd been going through, it's so nourishing to get out into nature. And it's so weird that, not that I forget it, but that maybe I don't do it more than I even do. So many of you get your vitamin N and send it to me. We all need to get out there and get cardio. I also went for a run for the first time since before Pod Jam and COVID, and it too was a miracle for my mental health. Those 2 things, along with meditation and journaling and reading the philosophy of people like Pema Chodron. But more than anything, it's this community and obviously the amazing group of friends I have in my life, many of which are you that I've gotten to know so well, that sustain me and nourish me and rejuvenate me to fight another day for the things that I care about and I believe in. And, I was talking to my old man, my pop, who is going to be 80 July 31st. He loves when I tell people that. He's like, please tell people how old I am. There you go, Pop. You are welcome. You are a legend. That legend, by the way, rode like 30 miles on his bike the other day. And again, yesterday, I think. So props to you, Pop. Love you. Anyway, he said, Pete, you're too stressed out. He's always worried that I'm too stressed out. And he's like, is it worth it? And it's a great question. And I really appreciate my dad for asking it and for caring about me. And it's always a simple answer for me. It gives me such purpose to do this work, to fight for civil rights, for human rights, for gay rights, for reproductive rights, for climate justice. And I need purpose. I need to have a reason to get up and to be grateful that I get another day, I get another breath. And so much of it is the work. And we talk about it here, and we learn from experts, and we learn about history, and we learn about ourselves, and then we try to bring it out into the world, and we practice it. And so many of you are doing such inspirational and important things, and I'll only call out my friend Kathy Nathan because she actually ran for board and won in the Rochester, Michigan Public School District. Kathy is awesome. Her message to me was so inspiring last night. I woke up to it this morning. She said, "Oh, Pete, I'm so sorry. I saw the election results this morning, and I can only imagine how exhausted you are today. I've been finding some solace in the words of John Pavlovich lately, who writes, wherever empathetic, courageous human beings spend themselves on behalf of other people, when they keep going despite being exhausted, when they refuse to tire of doing the right thing, when they will not be shamed into silence, then love will be winning." And I just was profoundly impacted by that quote, and I've always believed that love wins, or I want to believe that love wins or should win and that hate should lose. But the fact is, if you want love to win, you have to put in the work. You have to be that type of person who advocates for people that don't have your privilege, the people that don't have your status or your resources. Why shouldn't they? Why don't they? Why do you? And of course, most importantly, for vulnerable populations of people, for folks who have disabilities, for young kids who are confused or living in poverty, for people who are discriminated against because of their race or religion or their gender or certainly any other immutable characteristic that they were born that way. What are we doing if we're not using our privilege, our status, our resources to advocate for those people so they too can have what we have or what we've had? What are we doing if we're not doing that? What am I doing? That's what I ask myself. The question is it worth it? Is it dangerous? What will you lose? What could happen to your family? What could happen to your finances, your reputation? And that is a fair question. And that is a question that I think each person should have to answer for themselves. And it's a personal question and it's a personal answer. For me, I know the answer. You know what my answer is. The name of the show is Stand Up. We fight bullies here. So yeah, for me, my answer is and has been for a long time clear. It gives me purpose. It's why I'm here. It's why I do what I do. And I'm so lucky, I feel, to be able to do it and to be here with you and to be able to sustain it because of the many of you who pay for this podcast, frankly. Kathy went on, by the way, to say, you may not have won the election, but there are kids and parents and teachers in your town who heard your voice and the voices of people supporting your candidates. And they know that there's still love in their community because someone was willing to stand up for them. They're holding on to that this morning, and you need to too. Know that you've given them that love and even a bit of hope for next time. I'm holding you in my heart today. Kathy, what a poignant and generous thing to say to me, and I'm so happy to share it with other people so that they too, that wasn't just virtuous or gratuitous. It's Kathy's words. I hope that you feel them. I hope that quote from John Pavlovich resonates with you as well. All right, that's all I have to say about it. I'll definitely talk more about it at the Hangout tonight. We've all got our stuff. We're all fighting personally, professionally, in our relationships, in our lives. We're all struggling in different ways, and we share a lot of that at the Hangouts and on the Discord platform, but we celebrate our wins as well. Congratulations to Therese, whose daughter graduated from college yesterday, and so many great things happening for so many people in this community. That's just one that comes to mind. All right, let's get to the headlines. We'll talk more about it at the Hangout. I could use your support tonight. There's no doubt about it. I'm certainly struggling with this major loss and what it means for the town and for the kids and for my daughter who is going to be in 11th grade. I mean, she is doing really well, and I don't think it's going to affect her negatively, but I do have a lot of concerns for her and the rest of the students in the school, especially the black and brown kids, the Jewish and Muslim kids, and the immigrant or some migrant kids. I think we've got a few of those, and obviously any student identifies as LGBT who's had a target on their back for the past couple of years now in our district. They've been targeted. It's just been real hard. So I have a lot of concern for those folks. And Julia's doing real well. And so far, nothing's really blown back on her as a result of her dad's big mouth. Actually, after one time I spoke at the board meeting, some girl in the district, not in her school, shouted her out on Snapchat and said something like, Julia Dominic, come reel your dad in. And Julia is no wilting flower. I think she snapped her back or publicly said something like, bitch, come find me. You know, she got pretty heated. I felt bad that she was in that situation, of course, but she handles herself pretty well, and I haven't felt that she's in any danger. And, of course, I've met with the principals and the security at the school because of the previous threats that we have dealt with. Me being a very public person, a well-known person in town, not hard to target me and my family, and we have been, and I get that's why a lot of people are concerned and don't speak out. But I will continue to, and we will talk more about it tonight. Thank you. All right, let's get to the news. I think I'm a little silly and punch drunk. I'm going to use a sound effect. I had Eric Siegel on a couple of days ago, and he did the top 10 on Samuel Alito, which there's news about, obviously. If you haven't heard, it's crazy. First, from WTF happened today in one sentence. I love this daily email. It's day 1219 of the Biden presidency. There are 166 days until the general election. And here we go. Today in one sentence. Biden canceled $7.7 billion in student loans for another 160,000 borrowers. The Senate confirmed Biden's 200th federal judge. Spain, Norway, and Ireland said that they would recognize an independent Palestinian state. Months before Trump was indicted for mishandling classified documents, a federal judge said the Justice Department had strong evidence that Trump intended to hide classified documents at Mar-a-Lago. Yeah, they found some in his bedroom, apparently. Trump, now resorting to magical thinking and outright fabrication, is now falsely claiming that President Biden was, quote, locked and loaded, ready to take me out during the 2022 search of Mar-a-Lago for classified documents. He's saying the FBI was there to kill him. They were ready to kill him. So is Marjorie Taylor Greene. And finally, 49% of swing state voters in a new poll say they're worried about violence surrounding the November election. That's WTF just happened today. Let's dig a little deeper into it. Those 3 European nations that recognize a Palestinian state, Spain, Norway, and Ireland, they did this despite vehement Israeli and American opposition. The coordinated announcements, though mostly symbolic, delivered a significant rebuke to Israel. Well over 100 other countries have recognized a Palestinian state, but in Europe, Israel has enjoyed broad support. That dynamic has begun to shift as the war in Gaza has dragged on. The U.S. supports the eventual creation of a Palestinian state as part of a two-state solution to the conflict between Israel and Palestinians, but a White House spokeswoman said today that statehood should be achieved through negotiations, not declarations. Israeli officials denounced the recognition as a gold medal to Hamas terrorists and said they would withhold much-needed tax revenues now from the Palestinian Authority. Moving on to that new flag at Samuel Alito's house. Well, new news about a flag that he once flew. Apparently, he's got a beach house as well in New Jersey, which is not shocking at all because it's the Jersey Shore is filled with hate-filled Italian racists, my people, if you will. Anyway, he was flying a flag there, and it's called an Appeal to Heaven flag, a symbol that was carried by rioters at the Capitol on January 6th and was embraced by a strand of the Stop the Steal movement. It was flown last summer outside his vacation home in New Jersey. Last week, the New York Times reported, of course, that his house in Virginia had another symbol that was carried on January 6th, which is an upside-down American flag in 2021. The news has prompted jurists and politicians to express concerns about his impartiality. Alito said the upside-down flag had been raised by his wife during a clash with a neighbor, but he declined to comment on the flag at his beach house yet. We'll see what happens with that. If you didn't hear Siegel on Alito the other day, do yourself a favor, listen to it, and share it with your friends. So good. Severe storms destroyed parts of Iowa. Thousands of Iowans awoke to scenes of devastation after a wave of deadly storms, including at least one tornado, swept across the state last night. The governor issued an emergency disaster proclamation in 15 counties. I'm just hearing about this. I'll reach out to our friends in Iowa right away. But Greenfield, Iowa, which is home to 2,000 people, was particularly hard hit by this tornado. Many homes there reduced to debris. Multiple people died. It's a completely different town now, one resident said. Man, I had no idea about that until tonight, putting together the podcast. I am sorry, and I will reach out right now, thinking of Kim and Mark and Lincoln and Casey. Are you in Iowa? My friend Zach Walls, lots of listeners and friends in Iowa. That's terrible. But now, more top news. The city of Uvalde, Texas, reached a $2 million settlement with families of the children shot in a 2020 massacre. I may be reaching out to one of those families. Tina in Texas sent me an email about who to reach out to. It's a really important decision and issue, obvious heartbreaking one as well. In the UK, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak called for a snap election on July 4th, which his Conservative Party is expected to lose. The CDC identified a second human case of bird flu related to an outbreak in cows. That ain't good. UCLA removed its campus police chief weeks after an attack on a pro-Palestinian encampment during which officers did not intervene. Elon Musk's stupid company Neuralink, maybe it's not a stupid company, I don't know, but its first human brain implant lost most of its connections, but it's retained function and its subject remains upbeat. So that's an interesting story. Hundreds of civilians were abducted in the largest campaign of forced disappearance of the war in Afghanistan. And apparently, surprise, surprise, a U.S.-backed warlord was responsible. Shocking. That was always going to happen as soon as we went into Afghanistan in 2001. So at least that's my analysis of it. All right, those are the headlines that I've got for you. Let me see. Was there anything else? The Biden administration did report yesterday that a U.S. brokered deal to normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia is within reach, but apparently Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government might balk at the historic agreement rather than accept the Saudis' demands for a new commitment to a Palestinian state and halt the Gaza war. That seems like a tough part of the tough detail. In a bizarre incident at the Republican National Committee headquarters in Washington, D.C., they went on lockdown yesterday morning after someone sent vials of blood to the building, resources. The Louisiana House approved a bill yesterday that would add 2 medications commonly used to induce abortions to the state's list of controlled dangerous substances, making possession of the drugs without valid prescriptions a crime punishable by fines, jail time, or both. The Smartmatic company is alleging that the Newsmax right-wing Trump network has destroyed evidence in the voting machine company's lawsuit against the right-wing news channel over false claims that Smartmatic helped, quote, rig the 2020 election, according to court documents made public this week. That's interesting. Yeah, okay. Those are your headlines from yesterday. That is May 22nd, 2024. Now, let's get to those sound bites I've got for you. First of all, in case anybody thought this wasn't going to happen, Nikki Haley has always been a hollow barrel who just wanted to get attention and still wants to get attention and gain and keep power. Yesterday, she knelt down and she kissed the ring of our former and potentially future fascist dictator wannabe. Here it is.
As a voter, I put my priorities on a president who's going to have the backs of our allies and hold our enemies to account, who would secure the border, no more excuses. A president who would support capitalism and freedom. A president who understands we need less debt, not more debt. Trump has not been perfect on these policies. I've made that clear many, many times. But Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump. Having said that, I stand by what I said in my suspension speech. Trump would be smart to reach out to the millions of people who voted for me and continue to support me and not assume that they're just going to be with him. And I genuinely hope he does that.
Okay, well, there you have it. Oh, so gross. Now, let's get some reaction to that. A lot of people talking about it yesterday. Over on MSNBC, Nicole Wallace with Devon Hilliard. I thought this was interesting and provide some context.
Let me ask you quickly, someone who served as ambassador to the United Nations, who's still pulling in pretty large numbers, a vote 2 months after quitting the race, someone who ran against Donald Trump as too old and unfit to serve, today said he has her vote. Nikki Haley.
Nikki Haley in 2015 said, quote, Donald Trump is everything I taught my children not to do in kindergarten. I taught my little ones, you don't lie and make things up. She ended up serving in his administration.
Who are these people?
On January 6th, she called it an ugly day. She then went and said a couple months later that she wouldn't run against him for president. She ended up running for president. And then we saw Nikki Haley, while her husband was deployed to Africa with the U.S. Armed Services, mocked by Donald Trump for being away. And it was the words of Nikki Haley that were very explicit about Donald Trump. Said, in part, that they were disgusting, awful, unhinged, and said that somebody that makes comments like that doesn't deserve to be commander-in-chief. Her own husband got on social media and fired back and said the difference between humans and animals would never allow the dumbest ones to lead the pack. His allies pushed extramarital affair rumors about her. This is somebody who suggested that she may not even be eligible to run for president because her parents are immigrants. And today, her announcing that she's going to vote for Donald Trump is just, I think, another chapter in something that we've already lived out with the likes of Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio 8 years ago. She did raise her hand in that Republican debate and said that she would vote for a convicted felon if Donald Trump was found guilty. And today is evidence that she's sticking to her word.
We need shrinks and cult experts to explain this, because with what you're reporting, it doesn't make a lick of sense to me, and it's so recent. I mean, J.D. Vance in 2015 said something similar, but for her and her husband to both been feuding publicly with him just days and weeks before endorsing him is inexplicable to me at a human level.
I think it's power, and I think in American politics, access to power, in a party that you identify with, is a future. And I think that we have a great share of individuals that have proved this time and again that staying closely associated to Donald Trump is a guarantee that you are relevant within politics if you choose to remain in politics.
It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I saw this clip also on MSNBC. This is the former FBI director fired by Donald Trump, the very controversial James Comey. He was on MSNBC with Alex Wagner talking about what it would mean for the FBI and Department of Justice if Trump were reelected.
You say it's passed its stress test. Are you concerned that it may get a test unlike any other if Donald Trump is reelected? I mean, when you think about a second Trump administration, what do you think the implications would be for the FBI?
Oh, serious, for the Justice Department and the FBI, because Trump is coming for those institutions. He knows their power, and I think he has regrets that he didn't work hard enough to corrupt them last time. So he's coming for them, and that's a danger for all Americans. He's going to put people in positions in those organizations. He didn't have all-stars the last time. He'll have the bottom of the barrel this time, but people who will want to do his will, and that should worry every American. This election matters. Because of a reason like that, people have to participate. You cannot sit on the sideline. I don't care how you feel about Joe Biden. You must vote for him because the consequences on the other side are too severe.
All right. Well, there you go. James Comey yesterday on MSNBC laying out what could happen if Trump were reelected at DOJ and FBI. Now, here is Jared Moskowitz mocking his Republican counterparts yesterday over their, quote, accomplishments since taking control of the House last year from the House Oversight Committee yesterday. He criticized the Republican majority for helming one of the least productive Congresses in recent memory. He was responding to Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who I should have played first. I'll play her next, but here it is.
It's a little awkward when you want to disagree with someone on your side of the aisle, but I have to dramatically disagree with my colleague, Ms. Crockett, who used data and statistics and facts to claim that this is the least productive Congress in modern history. First of all, this Congress removed the Speaker, okay, which has never happened in the history of the Republic. That's clearly that's a big accomplishment in the 118th. This Congress took 15 rounds to even elect that Speaker that they then removed, right, which was historic in its own right. And then they removed a member of their own party. That hadn't happened in 20 years, so kudos to them. They've had a failed impeachment of a president. I don't think we've seen that happen in a really long time. This Congress did impeach a cabinet secretary, though, without meeting any constitutional threshold. We haven't seen that happen in 150 years. This Congress wants to hold Merrick Garland in contempt and then possibly arrest him. I don't think we've ever seen that in the history of the Republic. We've seen a failed motion to vacate to remove a second speaker. Again, history in the 118th. And who could forget that this Congress, on behalf of the American people, saved gas stoves and ovens and toasters and blenders and dishwashers from the communist grip of energy standards. So I think Ms. Crockett was pointing out that this is least productive. These seem to be accomplishments on behalf of the American people that are clearly historic and may never be repeated in another Congress.
Oh, man, do I love that guy's delivery and cynicism. I don't agree with him on some issues. I've seen him that I'm way off on, of course, certainly on, I think, the Middle East and a couple of others. But, you know, I'll take what I can get from a fighter in Congress like him on the issues that I do agree with him on. Now, here is Jasmine Crockett. She went just before him, and she was similarly criticizing how unproductive they had been, and specifically how ridiculous it was to go after federal workers who were teleworking, working from home.
But, you know, it's interesting because we've had so many conversations about telework and the evils of telework. And it seems to be this other false equivalency that if you telework, that means you're not working, instead of this idea that people are actually just working and they're not working in the building that is being paid for by the federal government. In fact, my mom is on telework, and my mom is absolutely one of the smartest people that I know. And so it always hits me a little differently every time we dump on those that are teleworking for the federal government. But interestingly enough, we're not allowed to telework here. We have to show up. There is no remote voting anymore. But even though we show up, are you aware of the fact that this has been the most unproductive Congress in the history of the Congress?
Congressman, I'll leave that judgment to members.
Well, I'll tell you it is. And I've got some numbers for you. So to me, you can show up and still not do a daggone thing. And so it's rich that we have so many opinions to give you and to tell you how to do your job. But seemingly we're not doing ours. Thus far, only 1% of legislation that has been introduced has been passed in this Congress versus the last Congress where it was 6 points higher, and the Congress before that 6 points higher, and the Congress before that 7 points higher. There is no other Congress that has been least productive. And guess what? The last Congress, they could vote remotely, and somehow they figured out how to get it done. So I would just say that we need to be very mindful of when we decide to throw stones, because we may reside in a glass house. Thank you so much for your work.
All right. Always great from Jasmine Crockett, who is just absolutely blown up. And that's great. Really, really impressive, very effective, as are so many of her colleagues in the Democratic Party and the House of Representatives, for sure. Now let's get to the leader of the House. This is Christian nationalist Mike Johnson being asked by a reporter yesterday if it bothered him at all, what with him being, so religious, that Donald Trump is such an absolute dirtbag in terms of what he has done, specifically sexually with women. And Mike Johnson was having none of it. He did not want to answer that.
You've been very clear about your disdain for the hush money case, but what about the underlying alleged conduct of paying up a porn star to keep this extra marital allegedly quiet? You're a deeply religious man, a moral man. Does that alleged conduct cause you any concern about the former president's character?
Look, I'm not going to comment on that. What we've said about what's happening in Manhattan is I've called it a disgrace because it is. It's clearly lawful.
Sorry about that terrible audio, but yeah, he went on to talk about how it was all rigged and lawfare and ridiculous, all against Trump. So there's that. And James McGovern wanted to make sure that everybody knew exactly what that reporter was talking about. Here he is on the House floor making a speech yesterday that he got reprimanded for.
We have a presumptive nominee for president facing 88 felony counts, and we're being prevented from even acknowledging it. These are not alternative facts. These are real facts. A candidate for president of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He's also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He's also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court. And yet, in this Republican-controlled House, it's okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham.
He take down his words.
It's okay to say the jury is rigged.
Mr. Speaker, I demand that his words be taken down.
It's okay to say the court is corrupt.
Gentlemen will suspend.
But not Trump is corrupting the rule of law.
Oh, you got to love James McGovern too, right? See, these guys are fighters. I'm telling you, I love supporting these people. All right, well, I'm out of time. Let's get to some comedy. I always like to end the news segment on comedy before we get to my conversation with Ophira, who we have some good laughs with as well. But Jimmy Kimmel took issue with all of these hacks and supporters going to stand outside the Manhattan courthouse where Trump is on trial, and he made fun of them, and I love this. It was real good. Trigger alert, you're going to hear Donald Trump Jr. in this clip, and Eric Trump several times. It's edited, but it's real good.
And, of course, no one did a louder job of defending Donald Trump than the unfortunate and chin-challenged soul who has the bad fortune of sharing the man's name.
When our defense goes after arguably the least credible witnesses in the history of, witnesses, you're not allowed to ask the damning questions of them. The star witness in this case is a 9 times convicted liar, and now an admitted thief. That is who they're hanging the entire case on. The other one happens to be a porn star.
And my dad screwed both of them.
That's awesome.
And then we have brother Eric, who took his look at me, Dad, please look at me act to Hannity.
They have charged my father with 34 felony counts. It's been what they've been doing to my father since he came down that escalator. I've been by my father's side almost the entire time. My father's been censored. My father, that man right there on the stage, my father didn't do a damn thing wrong. He's a great president. He's a great person. He's a great father.
And in case I didn't mention it 5 times already, he's my father. No matter what he tells people. And on top of all this, Trump or his team, someone shared this video on Truth Social last night.
What happens after Donald Trump wins? What's next for America?
Okay, if you zoom in, you can see they slipped in the words, a unified Reich. A 4th Fourth Reich, if you will. The good news is Trump wants to bring the country together. The bad news is that country is Germany in 1933. His campaign said it wasn't Trump who reposted the video. It was one of the junior Nazis who worked for him.
Well, all right, there you go. Let's get to my guest on today's show. She is one of my closest friends. She's one of my favorite comedians. I've known her most of my career, and you can see her if you're anywhere in New England, right outside Boston, Beverly, Massachusetts, to be specific. Next Wednesday, the 29th, Theater Off Cabot in Beverly, Mass. Go to Ophira Eisenberg for her dates, ophiraeisenberg.com. Follow her on Instagram and TikTok. And, of course, listen to her podcast, Parenting is a Joke. She's the former host of Ask Me Another on NPR. She is one of the best. And I wanted to talk to her because I wanted to have a conversation with someone I really liked and cared about, who would entertain me and enlighten me and make me feel good, and that person is Ophira Eisenberg. She's just one of the best. So here it is. I hope you like it. Let her know it never gets old. Let's do it. You know her. You love her. It's the host of Parenting is a Joke, which I think I'm going to share next week on the podcast.
Yeah.
Here as a way to help promote the fact that Wednesday you will be in Boston or Beverly, Massachusetts. It's Ophira Eisenberg. She is back. See her next week live in New England and hear her. Hopefully I'll get that together because that was such a great time to see you do those interviews. So How are you? Thank you for joining me. Nobody I wanted to talk to more than today.
Oh my God. I'm fine. How are you doing? I know that you had a rough night last night and and things didn't go as you perhaps we're hoping for with the election.
We lost 3 board seats last night.
Sorry.
And as you know, there was no alcohol in my house, which was good, or weapons. Not that I was going to self-harm, but I'm out for blood. It's hard. It's being a part of a political campaign and losing is hard. Being a part of a political campaign that's local and affects your kid's school is, I think, probably harder. And it's just, we lost. We won 2 years ago. And so it's pretty shocking. And we lost to cartoon villains, Ophira. Like these guys,
no.
The people that won are like a real dumb police officer who's also like a total conspiracy theorist and racist. They're all pretty racist. A 90-year-old woman who's been there forever. And then this other woman who's like super anti-gay and crazy. And now they're on the Board of Education. And it's just such a weird situation and a hard situation. So thank you for asking. And I'm happy. I just wanted to talk to you and have a good conversation, have some fun and talk about some serious issues as well as always. So thank you.
By the way, did they have like acceptance speeches?
Oh, no. They had acceptance gloating on Facebook. I couldn't dare go back on Facebook to see who had dunked on me. They attacked me and my family so much I must have got called a pedophile like every day for the last 2 months. Just for no reason. Because I support the LGBT community. Sometimes I don't know what's going on in the LGBT community, especially with trans kids or something, but I don't really question it. I'm not worried. They seem like the most vulnerable people. I'm just not worried about them doing anything. Like sometimes some things make me uncomfortable and I don't quite understand certain things, but I'm not like openly against anything ever. And I never have been in that world, no matter how we personally feel. What about you? Do you ever just get uncomfortable with any of the stuff, the trends, the gender?
Of course. Yeah. And it's not that I'm uncomfortable with it because I want to so desperately understand and be like, speak the same language as everybody else. That's all. I'm not out of tune, but am I gender fluid? I got to tell you, Pete, now that I'm just thinking about it, I was at a function with a bunch of women that were really super feminine. I put on makeup and what have you, but they were like almost Barbie-esque and loving it. That was totally their style. And I was looking at these women, just superior versions of women. And I was like, if you are she, her, I might be a them. Like my gender in relation to yours, I am not sure we should be using the same bathrooms.
Yeah, that's not the case with me. I'm so super overtly masculine. And sometimes people get near me and I see them give a double take and, I felt that guy's masculinity. That's what I get a lot of, I think.
Oh, yeah. But I was shopping. I went shopping at Urban Outfitters, which is like a trendy place. And definitely the people working there, the workforce is young, they're Gen Z. Some of them I think are just really, maybe just right out of high school. And everyone there has like a gender bending look going on. Maybe they are, I don't know. We don't get that close. I'm shopping for jeans. But then that thing happened where someone helped me and we worked it all out. And I went to pay and the person at the cash register said, "Did anyone help you today?" "Yes." "Who was it?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't remember their name." And they were like, "What did they look like?" And I was so wide-eyed trying to I was like, but I was just like brown hair. And because I didn't want to identify a pronoun because I was like, what if that's wrong?
And does that make you mad? Were you angry that you had to struggle to figure out the gender, that you had to struggle to be respectful of whatever that person's preferences were?
I get the only thing that made me mad is I was just like, we have to agree that like we have to just let each other off a little bit when we know it's not from the point of view of being hateful or like you would have to allow me to be like a woman in a pink shirt with brown hair and just we both go
which is so much different than what happened in the school board, which was entirely about trans kids' access to bathrooms, which is crazy because it just wasn't an issue. The teachers and the people in school, and obviously the 3 kids who identify as trans who would never go in the normal bathroom anyway because they're too afraid of anybody even knowing, basically. Right. Like those kids are the most vulnerable kids, more likely to hurt themselves ever than hurt somebody else. That's what people were outraged by, that somehow, and even worse, that the board members that we supported passed a law that made it the case. It was the state that passed the law. The board can't do that, but they made people believe, quote, normal thinking people, non-political people, that all of a sudden trans girls, boys transitioning or identifying as girls, were to come in the bathroom and take their dicks out. They said it over and over at the board meetings. They're going to take their penises out in front. And I'm just like, if some kid came into the locker room or the bathroom with my daughter who's in 10th grade at these schools and took his dick out, my daughter wouldn't be traumatized. Like that kid would be in so much trouble because my daughter.
Right, exactly. They would pounce. They would just, the person would never forget it. They would be like, that was one of the stupidest things ever. I know. I want people to feel safe when they go to the bathroom. I think that's like, that should be, it seems so obvious to me, but I often think back, and this is not the answer, to being in Amsterdam, traveling in Amsterdam. I was not high. This is not a story about me being high. Okay, everybody. And we were going to different restaurants. I went to a comedy club there, and so many public venues it was just rows of stalls, and you wash your hands in the middle, and it was genderless, I would say. And I thought that was now, I got to say, probably 6 years ago. And at the time I was like, this is just efficient, honestly.
Yeah.
There's a bazillion stalls and then we all wash our hands in the middle and there's mirrors if you want to put on lipstick or whatever. But no one blinked an eye that we were all in the same space washing our hands.
It's but like, to me, I was always like, the most traumatizing thing about bathrooms in middle or high school is using them, period. Taking a crap in a public restroom when it was the most common thing that we were all like, I know it's so uncomfortable. Also, if you knew that one of your buddies was taking a crap in middle school or high school, we would barrage them with wet paper towels. It was not a safe space. Like your buddies would just make fun of you. And I was like, there was real concerns, smoking in the bathroom, real concerns. But nobody. So anyway, they got people animated about it. It was just such a terrible.
We have to redesign so many things. We have to redesign so many ways of thinking. It's
the loss reminded me of when Trump got elected. It did, and I immediately went into the woods, and it was so nourishing. And I've distracted myself, but yeah, it's obviously really hard. Do you do anything? Do you deal with anything? Do you have any solutions for me or those who are something happens?
I think you're just knowing you. I would say you are already you are very attuned with what you need, which is you talk to people. You love talking to people. The communication, I think, really sets you free and makes you feel like it's the community, the mind share that I feel like that always lights you up. And you've spoken to me many times about got to get into that greenery, got to get into nature, get out of basically get out of the microphone. This is a great place for you, obviously, but sometimes you got to just get out, walk around. You have some people that you walk with regularly that are very smart.
I was with, thank you. I was with Dr. Zatz this morning, my friend Ken Zatz, he and his dog and it was great. And we just talked the whole time and laughed, and we saw a toad, which made me happy. We saw
that's a sign.
That's a sign. Mushrooms growing on trees. And I was like, would you eat those? He's a doctor. He's no, they will kill you. And we laughed. And, and the only other thing I want to say about this and just get your reaction to is it seems like in this country, and I don't know how much closely you pay attention, but it's like the Trump trial and the attitude around certainly Trump supporters. Like, it's not about policy. It's not about the issues. It's just about making us, people you don't cry. They get off on hurting you being miserable. It brings them joy. Your pain brings them joy. And I hate these people. I will say I hate them because of what they've done to me and my family and more importantly, vulnerable families. But I don't take joy in their pain. That's a principle for me. Sometimes I might start to, and I'm like, no, that's not who I want to be. Do you see it that way? That like the cruelty is the point, and that so much of their point of view is to watch you be upset. It's an archetype of personalities that
when the whole rhetoric is based on fear, right? That's what is bonding people together, like fear and hatred and being like scared of things. So then when the perceived villain gets hurt, it feels like justice is being served.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right about that. That's how they feel. They feel like they've won some kind of justice granted, they thought we were child abusers. They called us that. No. They said after the win, they said about the three candidates, two of which were on the board, go back to Epstein Island.
Why? Because their invitations are still available?
Anyway, thank you. Let's move on. It's graduation time of year. I don't know what your experience is, what your thoughts are. Your son's in third grade, so he doesn't have any significant graduation. Maybe you have a third grade graduation at your kid's school, but what is your feel?
Yeah, I think they let them go to school in pajamas, honestly. I think it's pretty low-key. There's some sort of running around and some final report card. No, it's elementary school, so they just do the other thing where they send us emails and say things like, 23 days left of school, with like their own party hats. And I'm like, yeah, party for you. Like, bank account about to be drained over here.
Because you're sending your son to camp?
Different, activities and camps. And he's doing a whole melange of, listen, I read these camps. I live in New York, so it's just like, on one hand, there is nothing to do because there's not I guess there's no just community center. That was like the kind of style of camp I remember growing up with. You just threw your kid at the community center and they would do some sort of programming. Right. But now it's, do they want to do rock band? Do they want to do coding? Do they want to do that? All these.
Yeah, you could do anything you want. Dungeons and Dragons camps. Sure.
But someone turned me on to the one that I should have picked, and I wonder if we even have any time left to put them in it, which is basically, they call it Montessori style, but they're just using that just because it's self-directed. They're just using that to hide the fact that it is a bunch of rooms with one has Lego, one has video games, one has this, one has that. And then the counselors are barely watching them, probably doing TikToks on their phone and vaping, while the kids just go to room, and there's like boxes of like cardboard boxes with the top box cut off full of snacks, and they just do whatever they want for 4 or 5 hours.
They're just in the wild, and they pick what they want to do, and that's that.
That's that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're Jewish, it says in your bio. And did you not do camp? Most of my Jewish friends did the camp.
I know. It's such a huge part of so many Jewish kids' experience. It's in New York, New Jersey. I think there may have been those summer camps in Calgary. I don't remember them, and nobody in my family went to them. So I certainly do not remember anyone ever talking about it. And so much so that watching popular movies about like kids in camp, sleepaway camp, like even the term sleepaway camp, I had never heard before I moved to New York. Never have I heard that phrase, except for in television and movies. And it was like this foreign thing. I was like, I don't understand. I don't even know what that is. And then I kept trying to figure it out. Is that for rich kids or is that for poor kids? Or like, why are those kids there? I didn't realize it was just a thing.
Yeah, I didn't really either, I don't think. We had sports camp as far as I could tell. I went to lacrosse camp for 1 week. And by the way, I was homesick and I called my mommy and daddy. I was crying. I went to lacrosse camp and it was the first time I'd stepped away. I was like, I think I was 13. So I was a little old to be like that. And I was homesick. I was there for 48 hours and I called on a payphone, my mommy and my daddy, and I was crying. And out of the dorm room walked my hero lacrosse player. My favorite college lacrosse player walked out and saw me crying. Hey, little buddy. I'm like, ooh.
Oh no.
Never meet your hero.
Yep.
Right. Never meet your heroes crying. Nope. So pathetic.
Oh, yeah.
I had a hard time getting when I was little. I was very connected to my parents and scared. I had to get over it.
Oh. Wait a second. Do you have a graduate? Do you have a graduate happening? A graduation?
So no, I had Ava's a freshman.
Right.
In college and Julia's finishing 10th grade. So I don't have to go to any commencements because I would just turn my back on the speaker just as a bit. I don't have any stance. I don't care who they are. I just want to turn my back on somebody because that looks fun. And I mean, I can't go. Those graduations to me, I said this once, I got in so much trouble in my daughter's 8th grade graduation. I publicly said, really? There's 1,000 kids' names that just have to be read. And it's like raining and cold. We're outside and it's just not fun. And everybody was rightfully critical of me. But I said what a lot of people think.
Yeah, I'm sure they were like, I don't want to be there either. It goes too long. All the names. I know that's one vote for just going to a very small school. 30 kids, graduating class of 30 kids. You're like, we're in, we're out. Great.
Did you graduate from things?
I did graduate from things. I feel like so in Canada, again, I hate to keep doing that, but it's just the way it is. Grade 9, so middle school is 7, 8, 9. And so graduation grade 9. And that was the thing. I remember there was a dress and there was a dance and that was fun. But we didn't get a cap and gown. You just went to the gym and you got a certificate or whatever. Wasn't
you a maple leaf?
They wrote your final grade on a maple leaf and they blew it off a stage. You had to catch it.
Do a shot of maple syrup. I have no Canada references. Everything is maple.
We all sat in an igloo drinking maple bourbon and talking about all the doctors we were going to see for free.
Now, speaking of which, I know you told me off air. I know we always know what's going on in each other's lives. You're dealing with your own polycrisis, a myriad of fun things right now. What's happening in your life, Ophira? What do you want to share?
The crisis of my life. Oh, what can I share? What's appropriate to share? There's people around me that are ill, unfortunately, elder people that are ill. So that I think that's just something, if you're lucky enough, you're dealing with it at a certain age. I will say that. If you're lucky enough as an adult at a certain age, you're dealing with elderly parents or elderly aunts, uncles, people in your family that are struggling or ill or whatever. And life switches very quickly in order to be able to help them because it doesn't matter. You know what? I was just talking about this last night with a friend. We anticipate this. I think even as kids, you anticipate your parents not being there or you anticipate your favorite uncle not being around. And then as you get older, you start conceptualizing, oh, is it going to be cancer? Is it going to be this? Blah, blah. And then it doesn't matter how much time and mental anguish you put yourself through. When it starts to happen, it is a grand surprise that nobody is prepared for.
So many people talk about it. It's such a huge issue. It's so hard to talk about. Everybody's on an individual journey. I feel more than anything else, everybody has just different resources to be able to, pay for something.
Oh.
Like, you're looking around like at your whole family, but what are we going to do? What's the safety net? And obviously it's different in different countries and so on, but it would seem in this country culturally, we want to pay for someone else to take care of our family. And to be fair, it's not about like sensitivities to a certain extent. It's I have to work. Like I have to work. Like I can't take care of this person. And you look at it in Italy and Europe, and I don't know what it's like in your homeland, But it's just like in America, that's just the nursing home industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And so in capitalism is just constantly trying to squeeze every last dime out of you. So it's like you're looking around at all the people you love that care about the person. What are we going to do? I don't even like you. I can't believe I have to talk to you about how we're going to take care of our loved one.
I know. And this is not me, but a friend of mine is dealing with an elderly brother who is unfortunately having quite advanced stage dementia. And one of the major issues is that he can walk, like physically, he can walk and do things. And that is such a stress on society and resources and because really the sadness is the model is if you have dementia, they really hope that you also can't get around because it's so much easier if you can just sit on a couch, a bed, or a sofa all day. Couch, sofa, same thing, but whatever, and then it's just easier to control. But if you're mobile, it's like very hard to find a place. I did not know
that. I did not.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that issue, and I feel super naive and ignorant. But it makes sense, yeah, because people, if they're suffering from any kind of memory, they're going to wander off. Is that the obvious concern?
And they're going to wander off. And you have people who can walk around and stuff. Like you can't say to someone, "Sit down," and never get. Honestly, that's just not good for. But if you don't, as an older person, unless you do walk every day, you will lose the ability to walk because if you're just lying down. So anyways.
Can you not tie some kind of harness and rope to
an anchor?
Should I edit that out? Should I edit that out?
Yeah, little collar with a bell.
That is 100% guaranteed now going to happen to me. Like fast forward, what am I? 40 years, if I'm even anywhere remotely close to lucky to living that long, and I'm just all harnessed up, and you can play this back for me, folks.
I'm just saying that if you think that's how it works, Pete, that karma is such that you say something negative and then it happens to you, I would love to live in that world. But I guarantee you from what I'm seeing right now, it doesn't work like that at all.
That's right. No, I prefer it. That's absolutely right. I know the world you live in seems a lot more realistic than the one I just painted.
I would love it if people said terrible things that it happened to them. Not really. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, no, the only thing I can tell you is I used to make fun of the bald all the time.
Really?
I mean, no. I did because I made fun of my dad. To be fair, my dad wore a toque for 10 years. He wore their jokes were pre-written.
My dad had one too that I was young, and then he got rid of it when I was a little older. But he had one when I was young that was like that. It was real 70s. Like it was big. It was real big.
Oh,
obvious.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad had one that he wore part-time, which made it even weirder. What are you? Who are you? Which guy are you? I was so confused. I'm like, are you dad? Are you Mr. Dominic? Are you insurance salesman? What is happening?
By the way, they say, I was joking about this too, because I have a little kid, right? I have a little kid, your kids are older, and people are always like, oh, you gotta, if you don't watch, if you're not there, like they grow up so fast and you don't want to miss a moment of it. I'm seeing it. And my kid sometimes expresses stuff to me that is so deep. I'm like, oh my God, this city kid is so mature for his age. I hate it. It's like his childhood is gone because I feel like he just is, I don't know, exposed to stuff and he's advanced in some ways. And then within the same moment, he shows up at the dinner table and he's wearing a crown and a dragon's head over the crown. He's got flashing sunglasses on and he's hugging a pillow and I'm Dragon Flashhead Man. And I'm like, oh my God, all right, we're good.
That's awesome. You made me I think of this a lot and I've never talked to you about it or really anybody, but certainly not someone like you who didn't grow up in New York City, who's raising their child in New York City. If you live in the suburbs, like I do, with these crazy fascist people especially, they're all helicopter parents. And one of the things that they do is they'll never let their kid go into New York City because that's where kids get taken and murdered and become sex slaves. What I always say to them is, when I say to those people, because we sent our daughters into the city plenty over there when they're young. Julia just went into the city alone on Sunday on her own to meet a friend of hers. She's 16, whatever. But I always say to them, I'm like, kids actually live in the city. Kids live there. They live there full time. When you say that Lucas has one thing, observation you meant is like matured, it sounds like you're saying correlated that he lives in the city. What does it mean to raise a kid in the city? How is it so? It's so different than your childhood in Canada, my childhood in upstate New York. What does it mean for him?
he's constantly surrounded by all people. He's just constantly surrounded by people. And we take the subway. We do things where we are constantly surrounded by people that do not look like us, do not act like us, are from different. Some are wealthier. Some are George.
Wasn't there a guy? There's a guy in the subway wearing a dragon hat with a flag, exactly like Lucas. He was literally the same guy. He was ethnic. He was from Kazakhstan. He couldn't be more different ethnically. Same costume that Lucas wears.
And to that point, my son taught. There's a lot of people asking for money and help all around the streets near me in Brooklyn. And my son he's always talking to me about how much he wants to make money so he can give money to these people. Oh. I had no concept of homeless people at all growing up. I never saw those people ever.
We had a guy who was a panhandler that lived on my street, and he was very wealthy. He just thought it was a fun thing to do.
No. Oh God.
He was busking. He's like, you have a garage, Mr. McDowell.
We had those. We had like people busking. That was a whole thing. And then I hate those stories. And I know there's a few out there about, oh, that person's secretly a millionaire. They just lost their mind. Which I know there's mental health issues. And obviously but I feel like that's not the story. The story is most people are completely down on their luck.
Do you think that parents worry less about their kids raising them in New York City because there's so many quote dangers?
Yeah, I do.
So they worry less to a certain extent, because I think that we're so much more irrational in the suburbs, especially the whites, especially the wealthier you are, the more you're afraid of just about everything in a city. And we literally hear people, don't send your kids, don't go in the city. They push people off subways all the time. I'm like, I think it happens like once a year. And I tell the girls when they go in the city, I'm always warn them, don't look down at your phone when you're crossing the street. Nobody wants to die getting hit by a delivery guy on a scooter.
That's what's going to hit you too. It's really going to be like some guy making minimum wage trying to get as many Uber Eats out there as possible. Seriously, like it's almost like even sadder. That's the person that might hit you because they're just trying to make an extra $15. But because I have a friend that moved to Tucson and she has a little tiny kid, and she tells me she's afraid she lived in Brooklyn and she's afraid to let her kid go over to other people's houses for play dates because she knows those people have guns in their house. And she feels like, I can't be there. I can't see it. I'm not used to that. Like she grew up in Manhattan. And she's afraid of the other houses in Tucson.
What do you think about sending your kid to someone who you know has guns in their home?
Yeah, I think I would not be cool with it. I feel like I don't like a lot of other parents anyway, so that would be a good reason to draw a line in the sand.
We knew a neighbor that had guns, and the girls would go to their house, and we simply asked them if they were secure.
Yeah.
And then I let her, because there was just no other kids. I was just going to,
it would probably come down to that. Now, I grew up in Alberta where people are there was a huge hunting culture, and definitely like my friends' parents would hunt deer and they had rifles, but they were in the garage in a locked cabinet. Yeah, right. They were not even in the house.
Right. This house, by the way, I remember my daughter telling me about it. I'm like, are the guns locked up? She's like, yeah. She goes, but I'm more worried about all of the swords. I was like, what? The dude had a collection. He was like a
samurai. He was samurai.
Yeah, he was actually a samurai. I found out, I thought he was just a painter, a house painter. Yeah. No, that's interesting. It's interesting just thinking about raising kids in the city. By the way, you think about all these electric scooters and bikes and skateboards.
Oh, God.
I always think that if I had those when I lived in New York City for almost 15 years, trying to get around the spots at comedy clubs or just trying to get anywhere, I absolutely would have been pasted up against a light pole on 57th Street. There's no doubt. Do you know anybody who has one of those who's also been in an accident? Because I don't know what the numbers are, but they seem really dangerous, especially I saw these kids riding by the other day, not wearing helmets. They were going 30 miles an hour on street.
Yeah, I know some comics that are bike, so they're just using the bikes, assisted bikes, whether it's city bike or their own bike, and they get in accidents. They do. They get in accidents. You might say, though, from a different point of view, because I know those comics, that is their mode of transportation. Like they are on that bike from the second they get up to the second they go to bed, like the amount of use they're getting it. So from a statistical point of view, the amount of accidents are getting is pretty small. And I think but you take risks when you're able to do that kind of speed. You just take risks.
I think what people are also missing, like I'm pretty safe. Like I'd wear a helmet because I think that's ridiculous to not wear a helmet. But I think I'd wear a lacrosse helmet with a face mask because don't hit the face. Like you're going to
my God. Just even like chips. Sometimes I'm crossing the street and a car drives by and basically gravel is flying in my face and I'm waiting on the corner. I feel like on a bike, it would just be that nonstop things falling off trucks.
I'm picturing you. I feel so bad for doing this. I'm literally picturing you like getting gravel and you get kicked up in your face and you're like, pip, pip, pip. Sorry that I did that.
That's how I feel sometimes.
Hey, I want to ask you, I haven't gotten a chance to talk to a woman and I wanted to ask you.
Wow.
How you felt? I should have asked you before I record. I'm sure you've heard about the commencement speech from the Kansas City Chiefs kicker.
Oh my God.
And you know what he said. And we're going to talk about this at the Hangout, I'm sure, and get everybody's take. Let's see. That'll be tonight because I'm airing this on Thursday. Ophira, what are your thoughts? Do you think women should stay in the kitchen and are happier? Wouldn't you be happier if your husband could make a sole income and you didn't have to work at all? Wouldn't that be great?
First of all, I would like to be locked in the pantry. Just shove me right into that little closet and get that lock, good padlock on that thing. Because I don't want to have to hear me complaining at all, Meg. Would I like it if my husband made all the money and I didn't have to work? I mean, on some level, sure. But no, not on the level where it's like, no, I don't want to go back in time and be a homemaker have to fight for my right to vote again.
So I'll just mark you down as a supporter then of the.
It's always so funny when someone's, hey, would you like your spouse to make a whole bunch of money? I'm like, sure.
Yeah, who wouldn't?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Women should stay home and take joy in raising the kids. What's wrong with that?
I know we should all put all of our hopes and dreams. That's how it's supposed to be. It's still like that way. You think that commencement speech, that person is a villain, which they are. And the fact that they are spewing that kind of hatred into the world is ridiculous. And the fact that all we can do is make fun of it. And it's just going to be another thing that goes away into the world. And we're like, oh, that was weird, huh? Is upsetting because that is how people think. And let me tell you, Pete, I work at night. And I feel pretty guilty about the fact that I'm often leaving around bedtimes. I try to figure out different times that we're doing this. And I feel like I am judged. I write jokes about it, but it is still across the board, the understanding of society that a woman puts her career and hopes and dreams on hold until that kid leaves the house.
Right.
And that's it. And then they write a book and they can do their little sketches. And they can, play with their friends and they can discover macrame or whatever cute little thing.
I don't know why you'd have dreams to begin with, I think. Why even fantasize?
A little lofty for a woman to have dreams.
About a career. Yeah,
it does. Stay in your lane, lady.
It really does feel like we're going backwards. The human experience is an inability to understand anything past the last two generations. It doesn't matter if you read about history in the book, you're doomed to repeat it. And I'm not the pessimist necessarily, but it does feel like when you see a speech like that, that's where we're headed sometimes. Women's reproductive rights in America, obviously, and going backwards. And you mentioned the right to vote. That's certainly something that a lot of people even support. Women shouldn't be voting. That's for this country. Remember how appalled they were when they were advocating for I remember this in that movie, Lincoln, black people to get the right to vote. And then what's next? Women? And they're like, suffrage was quite a movement. What do you think that kicker? How do you feel about the idea of the Kansas City Chiefs to protect their profits, even though he's a pretty good kicker? He's won 3 Super Bowls. Do you think he should be kicked off the team? Do you think it hurts?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah. Unfortunately, he plays for Kansas City. But yeah. Also, I guess you can't vet someone's graduation speech. But now that sounds like I'm trying to control what people say, but maybe I am. Maybe I'm like, guess what? You can't put hate in a graduation speech when you're trying to inspire the minds of tomorrow. And I guess we have to define what hate is, because someone might be like, I find you're saying there should be equal rights for everyone hateful. I don't. my hate speech of me being like,
That's basically what they kept making the argument in exactly what you just said in our school board fight, because we were advocating for the 3 trans kids, and they kept making the point, what about the other 8,000? Just like, what about them? They're not. We're talking about vulnerable people. We're talking about people who've been marginalized or discriminated forever. Like, we're talking about an entire gender in this case. There's Lucas.
Hi, Lucas.
Hi, Mom.
Look at him. I wish he would get one of his costumes on. What is the... Okay. Go get the dragon thing. I want to see.
Mom, once you're finished with your call, can you go downstairs to the backyard since it's open to create an obstacle course
Yes,
with me?
I will definitely do that.
That is so... First of all, I had no idea you had a backyard. I didn't know you were rich. Second of all, what a thoughtful thing. Thirdly, he is so well-spoken. And
very articulate.
Good-looking kid. I hate sounding, but that's a good-looking kid. I've told you before. And finally, what a lot of work you have to do to create that obstacle course. That was awesome. I love to see that. He gave his mom a big hug. You're the best. That's great.
Aww.
What did I want to ask you finally? Memorial Day weekend is an American thing. You don't have this in Canada? Do you have... Okay, what happens in Canada?
May 2-4 weekend. So it's Victoria's, called Victoria Day. It's the celebration of Queen Victoria. And also it's been over the years, because usually on the 24th, strangely, that's why it's always called May 2-4 weekend. And a 2-4 in Canada is 24 beer. It's called 2-4. Hey, get a 2-4 for the party. So it's also, there's still this idea of it's the beginning of summer and barbecues and hangouts, and everyone's, get a 2-4 weekend. So there you go. Queen Victoria's birthday and celebrating 24 bottles of beer on the wall.
You will be in Boston next week. Do you have any Memorial Day weekend traditions? Do you look forward to anything? Do you feel like it's the, quote, unofficial beginning of summer? Does it mean anything to you, Memorial Day weekend?
Yeah, it is. As you may know, Pete, being a gardener, it is considered the final, final weekend of the lowest possible, of the frost point. Yeah. So this is, in our climate, this is when you plant. This is when you buy your gardening and your plant. And that's how I think of it. Sometimes we go to a barbecue. Sometimes we've figured out where some fireworks are and watch them. But mostly I think about buying plants.
That's great. I love it. No, that's exactly that's one of the things for me. It's always been the college lacrosse championship, and I was a lacrosse fan. So I thought about that. And obviously a little bit about the day itself. I used to be more interested in it than I am now when I was younger, because of just veterans issues and Memorial Day, obviously, and to participate more in that. I don't love some of the patriotic, jingoistic porn that gets put upon us. But for anybody who lost somebody, obviously, it's a good thing. I think it's more than fair to say. But yeah, absolutely. The planting. It's the last
planting.
Sow seeds or buy plants and get them in the ground. And that is what I will definitely be doing. So.
Yeah, me too. Can't wait. Can't wait. But also, I will say, if you wait till the next weekend, they're a little bit cheaper. Anyhow.
Ophira Eisenberg with a great piece of wisdom to leave us with. Thank you so much for joining me as always. You cheer me up, you make me feel happy about humanity, and you're just such a good friend to me. And I hope everybody, hope if they're stand-up listeners listening right now, anywhere near Boston, you have to go see Ophira, and all the links to that are in the show notes. Anything else?
Wednesday, May 29th, off Cabot, Beverly, Mass. People, thank you.
All right, there she goes. Ophira Eisenberg, always good, always great, so thoughtful, so fun, interesting, and funny. Go follow her on the social medias, Instagram, TikTok especially, and of course go see her in Massachusetts next week. If you can, listen to her podcast, subscribe to that. Parenting is a Joke, and I will be back here tomorrow. See you tonight at the Hangout, anytime on Discord. You're never alone if you're a stand-up member. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. Sign up for a paid subscription or pay more anytime. Be the change you want to see in the world. John Carroll always is. Take it away, brother.
I think you're driving wheels been leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. Alright, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up. Oh, got to stand